Hey you! Yes, you. Would you love to learn how to divide decimals by decimals?
Yes!
Did I get a yes? Okay, let's get into the classroom. Welcome to class, guys. In this video, we shall be learning the simplest way to go about dividing decimal by decimals. I'm aware that a lot of primary school pupils, even secondary students, find this topic difficult. Once they are told to divide a decimal number by a decimal number, they find it difficult, but it shouldn't be so, alright? What usually introduces the difficulty is the point, right? So what we are going to do, I'm going to be showing the easiest way you can go about dividing decimals by decimals. Now, the first step in dividing decimals by decimals is to first of all get rid of this point, okay? Now, this is called the divisor, and this is referred to as the dividend. So the first thing you want to do is to convert this divisor to a whole number. So in doing that, we're going to have 3.048 over 2.4. So what do we multiply by to convert 2.4 to a decimal? We simply multiply by 10. Now that we've multiplied by 10, whatever you do to the denominator, you do the same to the numerator. So we are going to have this multiplied by 10 too. So now we've done this, we are going to move the decimal point from the left to the right hand side. So as we move this to this place, it cancels out, okay? So we are going to be left with 24 times 1 gives us what? 24, okay? Now let's look at the numerator. In doing this one, we are going to move this point to the right hand side. So when we do that, we'll be left with, this cancels out, and we'll be left with 30.48 times 1, which gives us what? 30.48. And now we have whole number. Okay, it becomes easy to divide. So here's what we are going to do. So we introduce the long division sign, and we are going to write the numerator here, which is the dividend. That's 30.48. And then the divisor is going to occupy this position, which is 24. So first of all, we have 3 divided by 24. It cannot, 24 cannot go into 3, right? So we're going to pick the two numbers, all right, having 30 now. So we can say 30 divided by 24, we are going to have 1. Then we say 1 times 24 gives us 24. Now once we do this, we introduce the minus sign, okay? So we're going to have minus here. And by the time we subtract it, we are going to have 10 minus 4 gives us 6, alright? And then 2 minus 2 gives us 0. Now, if we say 6 divided by 24, it's not going to work because 24 can't go into 6. So the next thing we are going to do is to put a point here. And when we do put a point here, it displaces this point. So we can now bring down our 4. And by the time we bring down the 4, we have 64 instead of 6.4, okay? So now we have 64. 64 is bigger than 24, so we can now divide. So we're going to say 64 divided by 24. Now let's try out the possible results. So if we say 24 times 2 gives us 48, right? And we say 24 times 3, right? 3 times 4 is 12. And 3 times 2, 6 plus 1 gives us 7. So we have 72. So obviously we are going to go with this. So we are going to have 2 here. We're going to write 2 here. And by the time we say 2 times 24, we're going to have 48. Now we've gotten 48, we are going to subtract. By the time we subtract, we are going to borrow 1 from here. We'll be left with 5. We put 1 here. So we have 14 minus 8. 14 minus 8 gives us 6. And then we have 5 minus 4 gives us 1. Again, 24 cannot go into 16. So what we simply do is to bring down the number 8, okay? And when we do that, we have 168. So we can now divide. So we have 168 divided by 24. Let's check out the possible multiples. So we have 24 times 5. This gives us 20. 5 times this gives us 10. 120. We are not close to it. So let's try 24 times 6. This gives us 24. And then 6 times 2, 12. 144. How about 24 times 7? Yeah. So 7 times 4 gives us 28. We write 8 and carry 2. 7 times 2 gives us 14. Plus 2 gives us 168. So we have 168 divided by 24 gives us 7. So by the time you say 7 times 24, we're going to have 168. We subtract and we have 0, 0, 0. So 3.048 divided by 2.4 simply gives us 1.27. This is absolutely easy, guys. Let's take another example. So just like we did in the previous example, we're going to have 0.889 over 0.35. The first step is to convert these two, that's the denominator, to a whole number, and we can do that by multiplying by 100. So once we multiply this by 100, we do the same thing to the numerator. So we're going to have 100 here. So let's move the point. So let's move the point from the left hand side to the right hand side. So we're going to have this, as this moves here, this cancels, and this moves here, this cancels. So we're left with 35 times 1. That gives us 35. Now let's look at the numerator. In the numerator, we're going to move this to the right hand side, 1. This cancels. Move this to the right hand side, 2. It cancels out. So the point has been moved from this point to this place, okay, the decimal point. So what we now have is 88.9 times 1. That gives us 88.9, okay. So now that we have a whole number, it becomes easy to divide. So what we simply do is introduce the division, long division sign. So we have 88.9 divided by 35. Now let's try the possible multiples of 35. So we have 35 times 2 gives us 70. And by the time we say 35 times 3, it's going to give us 105, which is even greater than this. So what we simply do, we go with this, okay? So we're going to have 2 here. So we're going to have 2 times 35 gives us 70. Now once you do this, you introduce the minus sign. So by the time we subtract, we are going to have 8 minus 0 gives us 8, and 8 minus 7 gives us 1. So we have 18. Now that we've gotten 18, 35 cannot go into 18. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to put a point here. And when we put a point here, it displaces this point here. So we no longer have a point. So we can bring down the 9, okay? So instead of having 18.9, we now have 189. So this is now obviously bigger than this. So we can now go ahead and divide. Let's try out the possible multiples of 35. So we are going to have 35 times 4. This gives us 140. And then let's have 35 times 5. 35 times 5. 5 times 5 gives us 25. And 5 times 3 gives us 15. Plus 2 gives us 175. Okay? And if we do 35 times 6, we are going to be having 210. So obviously we are going to go with this. So we are going to come to this side and we're going to have 5. Okay? And we have 5 times 35 gives us 175. And by the time we subtract, we're going to have 9 minus 5 gives us 4. And 8 minus 7 gives us 1. 1 minus 1 gives us 0. So now that we have 14 divided by 35, that's not going to work out because 35 cannot go into 14. And we have exhausted our numbers. We no longer have any number here. So what we simply do is to introduce a 0. By the time we introduce a 0, what we now have is what? 140. So by the time we say 140 divided by 35, which we already solved here, we're going to have what? 4. Okay, so 4 times 35 gives us 140. By the time we subtract it, we're going to have 0, 0, 0. Therefore, our answer is 2.54. Let's take a look at one more example. So now that we have this is how we go about solving this. We're going to have 0.0625 divided by 0.51. So to convert this to a whole number, we simply multiply by 100 and we multiply this by 100. So this is going to move to the left, to the right hand side, and this moves to the right hand side, and this cancels out. So we're going to have 51 times 1 gives us 51, okay? And then this moves to the right hand side, this cancels out, and this also moves to the right hand side, this cancels out. So we're going to have 6.25. So if you notice in this example, okay, we still have the divisor being larger than the dividend, which is not supposed to be so. So how do we go about fixing this problem? Here's what we are going to do. So when you have this, what you simply do, you say 6 divided by 51. Of course, 51 cannot go into 6. But what we do, we simply introduce a 0 here and introduce a point. Now, when we have introduced a 0 and a point, what it does, it displaces this point here. So instead of having 6.2, it becomes 62. Now that it's 62, we can now say 62 divided by 51, okay? 62 divided by 51, we know it's 1. Then we have 1 times 51 gives us 51. Then we subtract, introduce your minus, and then we're going to have 2 minus 1 gives us 1, and we have 6 minus 5 gives us 1, okay? And now we have 11. But if you say 11 divided by 51, it's not going to be possible. So here's what we're going to do. We simply bring down this 5, okay? And by the time we bring down the 5, we will have 115. So it's now possible to divide 51, okay? So we're going to have 115 divided by 51. So let's try out our possible multiples. So we're going to have, this is 102, and we say 51 times 3, we are going to have 153. So we are definitely going to go with this, okay? And we're going to have a 2 here. We're going to write our 2. So 2 times 51 gives us 102. By the time we subtract, we have 3 and we have 1, okay? So we have 13 divided by 51. This is not possible. So what we still do, we write a 0, okay? Since we have no other number to bring down, we simply write a 0. So we now have what? 130. So 130 divided by 51, we are still going to have 2. So by the time we say 2 times 51, we have 102. So we now subtract, okay? So by the time we are subtracting, we're going to borrow 1 from here. We're going to be left with 2. Then we have 1 here. We have 8. And we have 2. So what we have here is 28. 28 divided by 51 is not possible. So we still add another 0. So we have 280. 280 divided by 51. We're going to have, let's try it out. We're going to have 51 times 4. That gives us 204. So 51 times 5 gives us 5 times 1 gives us 5. 5 times 5 gives us 25. That's 255. So let's try 51 times 6. Wow, this gives us more than the number, so definitely we are going with 5. So we're going to have 5 here. So by the time we multiply 5 times 51, we have 255. Okay, by the time we subtract, we are going to have, this is 7, we put a 1 here, we're going to have 5, then we have 7 minus 5 gives us 2. So we have 25 again. Actually, if we keep going on and on and on, this is going to give us a reoccurring decimal. Okay, so we can go on and on. So we wish to end it here. So let's put a 0. Okay, so after this we can stop. So we say 250 divided by 51. So we're going to have 250 divided by 51. We're going to have 4. Okay, so by the time we say 51 times 4, we're going to have 204. So as I said before, this is a recurring decimal. That is, we keep going on and on. So we can decide to stop here, okay, and approximate our answers to 4 decimal places. So if we need to approximate this answer to 4 decimal places, this is how we go about doing it. We are going to have 0.1. So this is going to be the first decimal place, the second decimal place, the third decimal place, and the fourth decimal place. Remember, we are approximating it to 4 decimal places. Now that we've gotten to the fourth number, we are going to take a look at the number immediately after the fourth number, which is 4. Since it is not up to 5, what we simply do is to discard it, okay? So we are going to be left with 0.1225. All right, so this is the answer of the division to 4 decimal places. Okay, however, let's assume we are told to leave our answer in 3 decimal places. Here's what we are going to do. We are going to have 0.1225. This is the first decimal place, this is the second decimal place, and this is the third decimal place. Now we are trying to round it off in 3 decimal places. So let's take a look at the fourth number. Now the fourth number is up to 5. So what we do is to approximate it to 1 and add it to the third number. So when we approximate it to 1 and add it to the third number, we'll be left with 0.123. So this is the answer to 3 decimal points. So you can see it's absolutely easy, guys. A quick one for you. I would like you to pick up your book and try out this simple exercise. 0.0506 divided by 0.234. Leave your answer in 4 decimal points. So you can try this out and let me know what you got in the comment section. So that is it for dividing decimals by decimals. If you got value, do give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you've not. Turn on the notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I upload content like this. Share with friends and loved ones. And don't you forget, maths can be easy. I'd love to see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.